Hello and welcome to the BA News Show, your weekly news show every Friday at 5 with your host Rich, that's me, and Tabs.
Hey, hi everyone.
In a change this week, me and Tabs are doing the BA News Show from my back garden, socially distanced as we need to in the UK at the moment. I think this is the first time we've got together to do anything at all, not just channel-wise, since, February?
It's a bit weird, hearing you normally, not through a headset.
Yeah, definitely.
Compressed.
Absolutely. So, in tradition that we start the news show, what have you been playing this week, Taps? Tell us all.
So, well, you know, mate, Last of Us Part 2
Indeed.
has been getting pretty much hammered. I think we're quite close to each other, aren't we, in terms of progress on the game? I'm liking it. I'm really liking it. I don't want to put any spoilers out there, of course, but there has been some, what should we say, a bit of a mic drop moment early doors, which took some adjustment. I'm still adjusting. But the gameplay, you know, some pseudo open world elements, which I'm enjoying. The story's interesting. I mean, the graphics alone, just extremely engaging. They look gorgeous. Seeing your favourite characters and that sort of fidelity. Yeah, worth the price of entry alone in some ways. But what about you, Rich? Tell us about...
Well, spoilers, I've also been playing the Last of Us, as Tabs alluded to. Yeah, I'm enjoying it, actually, really enjoying it. I think it feels like the world it's supposed to be, so it's quite grounded, down to earth, and, you know, a grind in the world. But that's sort of enjoyable. It gives it that sense of realism in some respects. And yeah, I think we're a similar kind of place on it. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. Like you say, there's sort of bolt out of the blue, maybe less than a couple of hours into the game in terms of story that, I wasn't expecting at all. No spoilers. But yeah, if you've not got it, you're on the fence, like I was. Definitely I'm enjoying it, so go out and get it.
I think Druckmann, he kind of paved the way for that mic drop moment, didn't he? In some of the things he said. And from what we've seen, it is splitting the fan base. So it's going to be interesting how it all kind of all comes out in the wash. But certainly, as the first news piece will allude to, it's not selling too badly, though, despite the controversial nature of the story.
Absolutely, and that's a great segue. So 4 news items coming your way this week, and we're going to start this off with The Last of Us sales, or Last of Us Part 2 sales, should I say. So it's Sony's fastest selling release this generation, narrowly beating the the opening week of 2016's Uncharted 4 by just over 1%, so hardly a whitewash, but still. Download sales are not included in this data, so when we factor in the digital sales, it's possible the game's launch was even bigger. Comfortably bigger than the PS3's predecessor, with launch sales 76% higher. Wow, staggering. The biggest UK launch for any boxed game release this year so far, albeit we're only halfway into this year, with sales 40% higher than the previous best, which was, as we've alluded to in a previous news piece, Animal Crossing New Horizons. And this came from Games Industry Biz. What do you think, Tabs?
I don't know, just as you were mentioning Animal Crossing New Horizons, there's a caterpillar down here that I want to catch.
What, so it can poison you?
Is it poisonous?
I don't know, it's very colourful.
Is that how it works? Same as spiders, and see if I can get the...
If Tabs goes into anaphylactic shock, viewers, then...
We know why.
Then this will be a viral video.
But I mean, it's great news, isn't it? We want to see AAA games like this that show ambition, that show... that push the industry forward, do well. It's obviously interesting based on the leaks. We thought that might be damaging. We also thought, as we've just mentioned, the controversy surrounding the story would be potentially damaging. Naughty Dog have been working on this for 6 or 7 years, I think. So
I think it's really interesting because I think was it last week or the previous week that it seemed that the leaks of the story had not affected the pre-orders, which obviously has now borne itself out in the fact that it sold really well. But interestingly, and I'm not far enough in the game to comment either way, but it seems to be that a lot of the leaked stories were false. Lots of the things that were leaked about the story just aren't correct. Now, I'm not far enough to know whether they were or they weren't, and also I've not seen any of the leaked story bits, so I don't know. But I wonder whether that's also taken its toll on this. But it's certainly sold well, so it's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm enjoying it so far. Proof will be in the pudding, won't it? We'll get to the end of it.
So that's cool. So what else, Subs? Moving on into Cyberpunk.
Yeah, of course. Well, today for us, we film on a Thursday, so the Night City Wire has dropped. We'll come back to that. But obviously, building on what we heard last week, it has been delayed again. So originally it was set to release in April 2020. Earlier this year, it was then moved to September 2020. And then again, last week, we heard that it was being pushed back until November 2020. Interestingly enough, it was set to release on November the 19th, which, if we remember, the PlayStation 5 is heavily rumoured to be releasing on, is it the 20th, Rich?
Indeed.
So, yeah, I mean, we'll come back to this in a second. But
shrewd business decision or genuine delay?
I think so. They've cited reasons, but essentially bug testing. Yeah, so bug fixes and balance tweaks, CD Projekt Red have officially said. But I think, yeah, as you allude to there, Rich, the commercial motivation to try and straddle both generations, the PS4 and the PS5, seem pretty attractive. And then on top of that, of course, you know, they want to cash in on the excitement and buzz of the PS5. If they had to envisage a delay, you know, September isn't far away from November, the release. In these socially challenging times, economically speaking, people will perhaps save their cash for the PS5 release, as opposed to spending that money perhaps on Cyberpunk on the PS4. Hard to say, but yeah, I think from what you allude to there, Rich, it's a smart decision. And the good news for us is they've also confirmed that it's going to be, I don't know if you'd say backwards or forwards compatible, but the PS4 copy of the game will work on the PlayStation 5 on launch day.
And that's really interesting because they're saying that you could take the PS4 game and just put it into your PS5. I think that's what they're saying, isn't it? Which I think is really that's really interesting. I mean, is that suggesting now categorically that PS4 games are backwards compatible with PS5? I mean, that's a good suggestion that it is.
I think it sounds like that. You know, it's going to be hardware backwards compatible because of that. But at the same time, I suppose you could put that disc in. It prompts some sort of a download from the PlayStation Store. So it's not guaranteed, but it looks fairly likely, doesn't it? And then the other tidbit from that is that the great news is there's going to be a free patch that comes later after launch that actually brings the Cyberpunk 27 experience up to scratch with next-gen improvements. So,
I mean, I sort of feel, I don't know, I feel a little bit robbed on this one. So we're basically getting like, we'll end up with like a PlayStation 4.5 version of Cyberpunk or a next-gen and a half version of Cyberpunk, because it's not been built for next gen, it's built for current gen, albeit end of generation, so it's the best you're going to get out of that. But then they're going to patch it to make it probably marginally better for the PS5. I feel like in some ways we've been robbed a little bit of what it could have been on true next gen.
The only thing I would say is that, well, based on the PS5 reveal that we saw the other day, the graphics of Cyberpunk 2077 aren't that far away from some of the, you know, display the games we saw on the show reel. So in that way, you know, it's almost on par with it. I presume they'll add some ray tracing elements to the next gen version. They'll smooth out, resolutions might be higher, frame rates better. Maybe they can push for a 60 frames per second, which would be great. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, but
and I guess
it's good value for the consumer, isn't it?
Absolutely. I guess in that respect, if you did feel cheated because you're getting sort of a next gen and a half version of it, well, you just buy the PC version, I guess, because ultimately you're going to be able to pump it as much as your hardware can do at that point.
Yeah,
you know, you can just put everything to full, run amazing amounts of frame rates. So I guess maybe that's the solution to that if you feel a bit hard done by, I guess.
And that is the quandary I'm in at the minute, Rich, as you know. I'm not sure whether to opt for the PC version or the PS5, but yeah, I mean, it's certainly a compelling reason again for launch day for PS5. I'm hoping Spider-Man Miles Morales is going to be probably my primary pickup as a launch game. This will be a nice compliment by the side of it, should I go that direction.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and in other rumours, Cyberpunk related, there's been another suggestion as to the reason for the delay being to do with VR optimization.
Okay.
So there was a picture showed online of a Chinese press event, and according to Reddit user Server16Arc, the picture is from relates to Cyberpunk 2077, and in the background of this picture, there's a pair of Catwalk Mini VR treadmills, which looks really cool.
Really cool.
But essentially, they're suggesting they're going to be, adding that as a feature. Of course, we've not heard of PlayStation 5 VR officially announced as yet, but certainly that could be really fun to play. A first-person open world game such as Cyberpunk, so very interesting. And then finally, to wrap us up, of course, we mentioned early doors about the today's event, at least in our reality right now, Rich, the Night City Wire for the 25th of June. I've caught a little bit about it, Rich. I think you're yet to catch up on it. Yong Ye, I think his immediate response, he's disappointed. Not a lot of gameplay in it.
Okay.
It dives into some details about, I think, a feature they're calling Brain Dance, which the gist of it is you can kind of view secondhand somebody else's experience or memories. So you can kind of see it through their eyes, even hear and experience what they're going through.
So a person so like I could see yours, or a non-playing character?
Yeah, I think it'd be a non-playable character. Okay. It's like a technology in their world, which in Cyberpunk they're going to use for storytelling.
Okay, that's cool.
It's going to be used as like almost like a detective element to it. So you can, I'm trying to think, recently you played Detroit.
Yep.
And when you can kind of look back in time and see different moments, analyse them, I suppose you're recycling that experience to look for clues, things like that.
Okay.
And there is another episode due in the next few weeks or so. So stay tuned for that, BArcadians. But yes, Rich, do you want to move us on to the next?
So, next-gen price. Now, this is a story that currently will not go away due to the fact that everyone wants to know how much they've got to save for their next-gen hardware, be it Xbox Series X, PlayStation 5, or whatever else SKU could come out, such as the rumoured, there's like a...
Xbox Series X. S.
Series S, that's it, yeah.
Or Lockhart.
Which seems to be some sort of small version. So you heard us talking last week about this Amazon France leak, which suggested that the drived SKU of the PS5 will be €499, which we assumed would be $499. And then there was further speculation that the digital version, so the version without the drive, would be €399, £399 was what we suggested. Well, I think it's come out this week that actually was faked, so there's no credence to that rumour, but we do feel like that's probably around the sort of money that you're going to pay for it. But since then, Digital Foundry's Richard Leadbetter, has released a video analysis which suggests that in real terms, Sony may only likely stretch to a £50 discount on the driverless version. It basically comes from the fact that actually Blu-ray drives are relatively cheap nowadays. There's not a lot in them. So other than the fact that there's a little bit less plastic to cover the drive, and then maybe a cradle to hold it, there's not really a lot of savings. So if it does come out £100 less, that probably would be a suggested loss for PlayStation or for Sony. So I think we're unlikely to see that big a difference between the two.
Yeah, Richard in the video, he does a really good deep dive. I encourage anybody to watch it. But yeah, the gist of it is it will represent too great a risk for Sony. They do get a bigger split, a bigger cut from digital sales, and there's certainly interest tied up with that. But £100 discount or $100 or euros, he thinks will be too great a risk. And he's got a lot of industry expertise and know-how, so I think we can trust him on that. But the Xbox Series X, Rich, what do we know on that front?
Yeah, so I think it's even more shrouded in mystery, I would say. There's not a lot of things going on that. I'm guessing because...
Sorry, Series S, I should correct myself.
Yeah, so there's not a lot in terms of pricing for that at the moment. We've had no leaks, whether they're fake or not. This rumour comes from poster Eastern Men on Beyond 3D Forum, who has proven accurate with Microsoft information in the past. Last I heard, it will be half price of the Xbox Series X. And last I heard, Microsoft were prepared for a $400 Xbox Series X, said Eastman on the Xbox Series S. Well, that is crazy. If the Xbox Series X is $400, I just think that's going to be incredibly cheap.
Yeah.
And then to say that the Xbox Series S, which we don't even know whether it's a thing, we think it will be a thing, will be half that, $200. I mean, you have to say the Xbox Series X at this point is looking like a steal.
Well, yeah, given that we know the hardware in it is in some ways, you would say, better than Sony's PS5. You know, it just seems crazy that they could release it for £400. That is surely a massive loss, initially for them at least. That, again, is a massive risk when they hope to recoup that loss from selling games. So I'd be very surprised if it's £400. I mean, that if we do think that Sony on the money is going to be £500, it's a massive undercut, isn't it, on them?
But then, having said that, if your options are, so do I go £500 PS5 with a disc drive? Do I go, and I'm making the figures up because we don't know, £400 digital version or £400 Xbox Series X? Well, if it's the same price as the digital version and you're on the fence, it's then a tough decision. Do you go PlayStation 5 or do you go Xbox Series X? They're saying you can get a SKU of each for the same money.
The thing is, I think most gamers will be compelled by the games on the platform.
Absolutely.
So it won't be such a simple binary choice as that, would it? It would be more, what games do I want to play?
Yeah, what franchises have I been invested in the past that I want to play again and again? Gods of War, Halos, etc.
Exactly. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, with the Xbox Series S, I'm really interested to see what the specs are on that. Obviously, it's not been released yet. It's heavily rumoured. But I think from rumours we've reported on in the past, they've suggested it's a 4 terabyte console, which just seems baffling, doesn't it? I suppose they can really scrape the barrel in terms of resolution to give them some way of making that a reality with next-gen games. But
I mean, my problem with that is I don't see how you can next-gen, both of the full-fat next-gen consoles are about, 10, 11 teraflops roughly, or 10.8, something like that. How would it be possible to call it next-gen and only have 4 teraflops? And I get there's a lot of talk about it's not all about the teraflops, it's what you do with them, but no one's turning 4 teraflops into 11 teraflops. It doesn't matter how well you engineer the way it uses that power.
The only way I could foresee is similar to what they do with the Switch: dynamic resolution, dynamic frame rates, which, you know, I don't know if that will represent a great experience, but a budget way into the market, so suitable for some. But shall I wrap this up, Rich, with our last piece today?
Go for it, mate.
So, PlayStation's former America boss, Sean Layden, has basically been talking about games, AAA games, being too long, and that trend, essentially, as he puts it, not being sustainable into future years. So he's referenced The Last of Us 2, which is a game he oversaw, which he's saying was roughly double the length and took double the development time of its predecessor. He doesn't go into numbers necessarily, but he references a common theory that development costs have doubled with every new console generation, claiming that current gen games have reached between $80 million and $150 million for most AAA games. Wow. Which does seem baffling. Yeah, that's crazy. More than some movies. It cost to make.
Yeah.
So what he says is, his quote is, the problem with that model is it's just not sustainable. I don't think that in the next generation you can take those numbers and multiply them by 2 and think that you can grow. Personally, these are his feelings. As an older gamer, I would welcome a return to the 12 to 15 hour AAA game. I would finish more games, first of all, and just like a well-edited piece of literature or a movie, looking at the discipline around that could give us a tighter, more compelling content. So yeah, it's just something he'd personally like to see return in the business. We had a little chat before we filmed it, Rich. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but when you talk AAA games, you're expecting groundbreaking graphics, or at least as good as you see generally. There are exceptions to that. You're expecting an in-depth story and an in-depth gameplay, whether it's be through mechanics or whatever, and generally those things aren't really borne out in 10 to 15 hour games nowadays. And not just that, they're not born out, some of them aren't born out in 20, 25 hours. I mean, you've recently played The Witcher, which you thought was fantastic. Well, what do you think your playtime was on that? 50 hours, 60 hours?
Oh, well above that.
So-
80 plus, I would say. But I think that's a good point. That's the thing. Open world games, which we know are very popular these days, and I'm sure will continue to be, and very profitable, you just can't really compact that down into a 15-hour experience without really throttling that experience in some way.
I think I look at it like this. An open world game that's only that amount of hours would probably be a sparsely populated world, because you would have to limit the amount of things you could do in the world.
The scope would be
exactly. So I feel
shrunk.
like I do get what he's saying, and we have to ensure sustainability in terms of develop. We don't want to end up with like 3 developers and they're all just held by the big people. We want lots of people to be able to build games so that we get lots of different ideas and we're not seeing the same things. But we have to ensure that it's sustainable. But I'm not sure whether this is the answer.
I mean, I think we said earlier as well, Rich, with indie games, we see that they still find a space to make tight, compact story experiences that are compelling. So I think it's just, the grand variety. That's what we want to continue to see. I suppose something in his favour, and we've talked about it before, some of the AAA games out there, for example, GTA, it's been years now, hasn't it, since the last GTA game.
Yeah.
And seemingly there's no GTA 6 in sight. So for those sorts of processes, I mean, we mentioned The Last of Us Part 2, I think that's 6 or 7 years in the making. That is a massive gap of time. So in terms of delivering what fans want to see in a relatively short timescale, well, that would be a benefit. But whether you'd lose out on those experience being shrunk down to these 15 to 20 hour time
constraints.
Scales.
That's the worry, isn't it? I think that's the worry. But interestingly, and I think what he said is sort of borne out in the way they've positioned the hardware of the PS5. Now, they've spoke at length about how easy the PlayStation 5 is to program for. Whether that's going to be the case or not, at the moment we don't know. But if they can make it easier for developers to develop games, then obviously that's going to make it more cost effective. They can do things faster. They don't have to do so much optimization. Well, I feel like his comments sort of, they sort of mirror the way that they've positioned the PlayStation 5, or at least the way they've suggested that they're trying to position the PlayStation 5. So I think it could be streamlined in both hourage, as he's suggesting, but also in the hardware and the way that it can be used. I think that will make it easier for developers to develop more cost-effective solutions.
That's a really good point, because obviously we've recently seen the Unreal 5 engine, or Unreal Engine 5, and that, as we know, seems to be very developer-friendly in trying to limit the amount of effort, time consumption that goes into these games. So maybe that's the answer in itself.
A prime example of that, they were suggesting that currently, with the way you program for the current Unreal Engine, you would make something in a certain program, and then you have to sort of remodel that in the Unreal Engine to take it into the game. Well, you can now move assets straight across. Well, that's streamlining a massive portion of your asset manufacturing. So, I think it's stuff like that that's going to help keep the games industry sustainable, rather than going, actually, we'll just make all the games shorter. But who knows?
Yeah, don't let the customers feel it. Look into the innovation behind the technology that goes into development.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think that's about it for today, isn't it, Rich?
Yeah, so that's everything in the news this week that we could find. Relatively interesting week in the news. If you've enjoyed what you've seen from us in the Garden BA News Show, drop us a like. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel to see more content from us. And I think that's all we've got time for. Another one for the archive.